Hello and welcome to Lofty Pursuits and Public Displays of Confection in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm Greg and we make hard candy right there. We're on this project, if you haven't been following this, of making tangerine sour candies. Here's our final artwork that's going to be going to press shortly. And you guys voted on it. And we've been getting huge amounts of feedback from you that's wonderful. So we've been testing some of the feedback in the past 2 weeks. You suggested that we needed to make smaller pieces in the raspberries, or about 1.5 times the original, because the originals were smaller. You suggested that we make the acid finer than we were doing before, because it comes about the consistency of table salt. And we've done all of these in tests, and we've learned a lot. So we got these little rollers, and this is based off your feedback. Small might be better. They have grooves in it. It looks like they'll be perfect. And we ran them through. We usually use these for nectars, and they have an interesting history. They came from a candy store called Mullane's in Cincinnati. They opened up in 1848 by a guy named John Mullane. Actually, his mother started the firm. He took it over. They had a whole building in Cincinnati. We have a video about that. And if you look in the upper corner, I'm sure I'm going to throw a link into that video that talks about our nectar drops and these rollers. And they're really pretty. They kind of look like seashells. We use them for nectar out of tradition. But I really like the grooves in them. One of the problems with small rollers is the sheets come out longer, and it's a little hard to make a big batch, but I thought it'd be worth it if it worked out right. So we poured the hot sugar, we cooked it up, we poured it on the table, and we worked it through the machine, like we always do. And we ended up pressing out these beautiful sheets of shells, and I gotta say, these things look really nice and orange. And then we went with the other half of the batch, and we did the same with our raspberry shape. Between the two, we have 2 shapes to test side by side. And we're going to test them side by side in the batch roller. And this is where we learn something interesting. We demonstrate Newtonian physics, which is pretty cool considering most of the sugar behaves using non-Newtonian physics. And I've discussed that in other videos and on the podcast as well. The Newtonian nature of this is just force equals mass times acceleration. We've all learned this. So I was afraid of the little shapes breaking when they tumbled, but they have less mass, which means they're falling with less force. The tumbling machine means it's dropping everything from the same height, so gravity only has a fixed acceleration, so between the two pieces the acceleration is the same, the only difference is the mass. And that's when we learned that the candy's lighter mass keeps it from pounding into the wax and getting the wax to apply right. We did a little bit of studies here. The raspberry drops, which are about 4 times as heavy, hit fine, the wax sticks fine, and the acid sticks fine. But the acid didn't stick consistently to what I'm going to call the nectar drops roller. And there were all sorts of different shapes. So some of them had a lot of acid sticking on it, some had very little. And the problem with that is we have an inconsistent product, and one that isn't sour enough. Now, I could build a 4-foot in diameter panning machine, which is about what it would take to make this thing work. But obviously, that's not what I'm interested in doing, and I don't have the space for it. So we'll go with the raspberry rollers because the acid held really, really well. And we're able to send it out to our beta testers. And that's the next stage. So we're going to hear back after we talk to them. This week's problems are new. The problems are supply. It's this tin. I got a quantity of them to test, and they were great. And it was a fairly good quantity, but it wasn't as many as I'm going to need to do full production. And then I contacted the supplier and they said, yeah, you got the last of them. We'll have a restock in late September. So then I was on the hunt for new cans, and I got them, and I got the samples in yesterday and tested them out. And they're just about as good as these. They're the same diameter and height. They don't have this little ridge that I kind of like, but they're going to do just fine. And we just sent those out for testing. In other words, we filled them with candy. We mailed them across country to see if they act like a maraca. And when they shake, if the candy gets destroyed in shipping, because if it doesn't get to you, it's not useful. To that end, we also got some foam discs. Now, they make these food-safe foam discs that are intended to go inside medicine caps, but they make very large diameter ones, and I've got one that's about 1/4 inch shy of the diameter of this can, and we're testing that, doing side-by-side tests. If it makes a difference, it's going to go into the final product, and if it doesn't make a difference, well, it's just going to hang loose here, and we're not going to use them. I won't buy any more. We got the acid ground to as close as a powder as we could. We did this with a food processor, and we have a better grinder in the back, but it was being used by somebody else. It had just been washed, and because of that, it was wet, so it wasn't really practical to use. I'm convinced we can get a better powder than we did the last bit. We got it very fine, but not to the consistency of, say, powdered sugar, which is what I'm trying to do. If it gets really hard to do, I may try to mash it with a ball roller. They use this for making fireworks and mixing things to a very precise granularity, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. Our fine grinder is nothing more than a coffee grinder, but I think it's going to do fine. And if it can get the powder to the right consistency or close enough, it's going to make me happy. So the raspberries, with all the little textures, held all the acid in just the right spot and gave that tremendous burst at the beginning that you guys experienced. Fortunately, when we made this batch, we had some tourists in town, and some of them had tried the original candy, and they told me it was pretty darn close. So I think it's time for the next batch to go out to the beta testers. We got a new batch of them. Some of you contacted us recently. You'll be contacted shortly if you're getting samples. And we also got some of the old ones who responded back with feedback. So we're going to get these candies out to you, hopefully in the next couple of days. They'll probably ship before this video goes up. And we're going to see how that goes. I've always believed in cool equipment and good equipment, and I just got myself a new toy. It's from a company called Ernest Wright in Sheffield. They're one of the finest makers of scissors and shears on the planet. A perfect set. Its balance point is right here by the where the finger goes. It's designed to cut against a surface. It's so polished I can see myself in it clearly. And they're just as big as my other ones. They're really good to do. They come with a beautiful leather holster that was also made in Sheffield, oddly by a guy who was originally from Portland, Oregon. But we're going to be taking them for their test run today, and I thought you'd like to see my new scissors. So what have I been doing for the past 2 weeks? Well, we have been working on things like sourcing these tins, which we're having trouble getting, and testing the candy. But last week we did a great retro video pulling out some footage from 2016 where we went to New Orleans and met with Ron Cotterman, who makes the Roman chewing candy down there, as his grandfather did starting in 1915. But that's not what we've been doing this past week. We've been working on a collaboration project. We've been making a Lofty Pursuits beer with Ology, a local brewing company. Yep, Lofty Pursuits co-branded beer. It's a strawberry, watermelon, limeade slush, which is a wheat beer with a big sour fruit crunch flavor. We've developed it together. We developed a candy to match. They developed a beer to match. And we hit a really fascinating middle ground with this fruit beer. It's been a lot of fun working in a brewery this past week. They canned it today, actually, and this is one of the first cans off the assembly line, I'm happy to say, and it's delicious. Branching into an adult beverage is kind of an interesting place for us to go, but it's been a whole lot of fun. And you can possibly get this for yourself, so ask your liquor store if they can order Ology, and if they can, order this, the Lofty Pursuits beer. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to us here on YouTube and ring the alerts button to find out when new things come out. If you want to know when this is coming out, go to our website, www.pd.net, and sign up for our email list. And while you're there, take a look at the other candies we have to offer. You can order them there. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And of course, this video is supported by our Patreon subscribers, who, among other things, will get an advance warning to pre-order this candy. So, you can support these projects with that. And of course, thank you. And thank you for letting us do what we love to do and enjoying it yourself and getting our candy. We really appreciate it, and it's such a cool thing that we're able to do this. And we can do this because of you. You've helped us develop this candy, and you've helped us be a business. So I want to tell you, we really appreciate you watching these videos and supporting Lofty Pursuits.